So good afternoon, everyone. We're going to talk today about what's going on with the high school assessments, where we got several things on the agenda for today. So I want to get started, and we'll have plenty of time for questions. So if you have something, put it in the chat, and we will make a note of that, and just we'll work to get your questions answered. So what we're going to do today is we're going to just do some quick updates. We're going to look at the ACT junior only, the grade 9 and 10 Aspire, Civics, Apple, AP, and then we're going to get to the good stuff. Sorry, Sarah, I know AP is the good stuff, really, but then we're going to be looking at access, and then we're also going to be spending time talking about some of the changes that have been made for ACT accommodations and that process and what it looks like. So, as always, your questions are really important, and to share those questions, even though you may think, well, everybody knows this, it's really good to make sure that you do ask them, because without the connection between all of us, we don't get any better, but by working together, we do. So some quick updates. First of all, Civics Test. The link that was sent out to the department chairs through through Marty Moe of CNI, the social studies person, and anyone else I've sent the link to, that is the same link, but things have changed behind the link. So what's changed is students do not have to be on the network like they used to, so they can take it anywhere. There was also a time restriction, and that has been removed. So the Civics Test is pretty wide open. It is, however, just for this academic year. Once we get back into, with any luck, a little bit more typical time frame and who has access to what. So far, so good with being face-to-face for the most part. We will probably go back to a restricted time frame and restricted location, just because. I can go into greater detail, but it's not worth it today. So just so you know that the current link has been changed to recognize anytime testing and anywhere. Also, this is pending finalization with senior leaders, but Wednesday, April 6th looks to be like the grade 9 and 10 only day for Aspire. That's something that we discussed last time in our meeting, and so I moved that forward, and I'm going to hopefully get a decision really soon on that so we can make sure that all calendars read that. Apple, which for those of you who aren't aware of it, it is a language proficiency test for languages other than English. Today we're talking about access testing, but the Apple test is, for instance, for world language students as well as DLI students. So it could be if you're taking a German class, you will have this available to you. That's moving forward. I really wanted to make sure that professional development, teacher access to the data, and data protocols are in place prior to doing this. So we're looking at world languages. The window would be December 6th through January 14th. And it would be for those students who are level 3 and above. So, you know, the 3rd year, 4th year, 5th year, AP language students. This is an optional test. It is not required, although we would certainly like to have that available for students. But again, the reason why I've been really kind of holding up on this is because I want to make sure these things are in place, that we're able to get data to staff, we're able to get it to students and families, and have everything in place. So that is quickly falling into place now, and I will be sharing more information as we move forward. So as I said, the window is December 6th through the January 14th. If there are accommodations, I'll connect with everybody. We need to have those available by the 15th of November, because we can't just click a box like we used to for other exams. I have to send this off, and it has to be, it's 10 business days that they put in the accommodations. So Also, just so you know, the results are the reason why this window is where it is. The results will be available for students to see prior to registration for next year's classes. The results come back in about 2 to 3 days. So pretty quick turnaround. Just so you are aware, AP window for registration has closed. It will reopen for late fees. The students who are willing to pay the $40, who decided not to register early, that window will be open once again on Monday, November 1st. Currently, we're sitting at approximately 3,000 exams. We normally would expect closer to 4,000. We've done some checking, and this is a trend across the United States. So there are big districts, there are a lot of districts that are down with their registration. It's also true across the state of Wisconsin. And probably it's because people are just kind of waiting to see what happens and are willing to pay the $40 late fee. That may not be the actual reason, but that's what we're hypothesizing. But just so you know, Sarah has been in contact with your AP coordinators at the building. And if you'd like any other information, please let us know. Also, Madison Promise, so the virtual students, keep in mind that as we get closer and closer to Access and ACT and Aspire, et cetera, that all state testing must be done in person again this year. There's no waiver from the federal or from the state. There's not even an application from DPI. So while assessments can be done virtually, if there's provided by the districts. So for instance, Achieve 3000 in 9th grade comes to mind. That one can be done virtually at home. Any other assessments that are out of this office or through the district can be done virtually, except for the state tests. Melanie, you got a question?
I just wanted to ask a question about this because last year we had all kinds of trouble with our micro school girls being on our lists when we go in to organize the tests and getting labels and all of that stuff. They were not included in our school. And I fear that unless this is addressed now, Madison Promise is going to be the same thing because those kids are not on our rosters.
Okay, so
can I bump in
yeah,
with this real quick?
please.
So in terms of, I'm just speaking to Access, and I would imagine most state tests to follow suit. Right now, we're going to get to a lot of Access stuff that will include this information, but I'm going to be working on rosters next week. And the way that I see lists Madison Promise is as a secondary location. So when it comes to Access, I anticipate for that test specifically for them still to come up on their home school because that's the primary enrollment. We can troubleshoot those, and when we get the rosters out for Access, that'll kind of lay the groundwork for all of our remaining state tests. If you notice there are some students missing from that list, you can check in with us on them, but I think that it's going to default to whatever their primary location is. And for the moment, Madison Promise is a secondary enrollment for students that I've checked for Access specifically.
Okay, I'm going to ask Lori because I don't know that that is true. And
Okay.
and also any of the IAE, any of the alternatives, like the micro school, for example, that's tied to West, they definitely are not. They're listed under innovative and alternative.
Well, that might be true. I was thought you were asking about Madison Promise.
Well, I mean, all of the alternatives that are not.
Right.
Yeah.
So this year we have
primary enrollment.
This year we have Allison from IAE with us in these meetings, and so we will work together to make sure that those students who are in IAE or in some of the programs that are across the district are recognized and pulled up, and I will work with her and Sarah will work with her to ensure that the rosters are current and that we share that information with you so that we know labels may end up at West, but we know that the test is actually being given at another location.
Well, and I think I know we can talk about this later, but I think we want all of our alternatives to test at their home high school, even if their primary enrollment is IAE. We've been in the past years telling students to go to their home schools to do that.
Not
So-
for, but not for Capital or Shabazz.
Right, yes.
So we should like clearly delineate, like these kids would come to their home school, these kids would not. And we should spot check those labels, I'm especially concerned about ACT because they pull those labels like soon.
Yes.
And it's nearly impossible to get another label made from ACT.
Right. The only school that is, or program that's out there that I would say that we would not bring them back to their home high school would be Horizon High School, simply because it's a rehab school and I don't want those students back in their environment where they had the issues to begin with. So I typically bring those over, and those are only a handful of students, 1 or 2, maybe 3. So we'll work on that, but absolutely. And yes, Marianne, thank you. So capital enrollment, as well as Shabazz, they're all linked in IC to those schools as primary enrollment. So that's where the labels will come. Melanie, I appreciate you bringing this up because this is something that you know as well as I, that this is a recurring issue and we need to straighten this out. So thank you. Okay, let's get into access. Just a reminder that this fulfills both state and federal requirements, that it is a proficiency exam for language acquisition for English. Here are some things that we know. I mean, there have been a lot of changes over the course of the last 2 years, but these are things we know. Access and alt access must be given in person. And I'm going to also say that there are no opt-outs of the access test. Last year, we had a special circumstances in which we were all virtual through this, through most of the window. And so we did a process that we called decline to test for safety reasons. That will not be coming out of my office this year. Since we are in person, the expectation is that students will test. Now, we'll talk about Madison Promise in just a few minutes. The state window opens and we're going to maximize the time for this assessment on the state window. So December 1st is when the state window opens. It closes on the 28th of January. I need to tell you right now that I've pushed really hard on this and it still is not, it's coming from the vendor, but ClassLink will not work. You will be getting tickets as you have in the past. There will be 1 ticket for each of the 4 domains. And yes, they will have to be separated. It's still all the same issues as we've had in the past. I just was in a meeting yesterday morning with Jesse Roberts, who is the state Title III consultant at DPI. He is also extremely frustrated that the vendor is moving away from single sign-on and towards a different process. And we're just not happy with that. So I'm going to be pushing on that a little. But just so you know, it still is ticket driven and ClassLink will not work. All right, here's kind of what's happening and what needs to happen in the next couple weeks. So first of all, student accommodations that are found in OASIS are going to be pulled tomorrow. Sarah will be pulling those as if they're in OASIS, great. And if they're not, we know that. They will be incorporated into a roster, which will be sent to each one of you that is listed as the coordinator for access. And if anybody else wants that, if 2 people at your school have that, that's fine. The roster will contain a list of students who are expected to test. So this will be from taken from IC, and it will be those students who are considered to be EL students. It does not mean that the students have accepted and are in programs that support them. If they are identified as an English learner, they will be expected to test. Also on the roster will be students who have accommodations. Pulled from Oasis, Sarah will be flagging, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you're going to be flagging students that have things that are unusual, like open IEPs or no accommodations listed, even though they have an IEP. I don't know, Sarah, do you want to just kind of, did I cover it or?
Yeah, you mostly covered it. I'll include all the typical instructions with it, but I'm just going to try to draw attention to any student that we might have missing information for and give an opportunity to fill in that information in that week after that, before we print tickets, so that as many of the accommodations that are needed are in place before the first batch of tickets are printed. We can add things beyond that, but we're just trying to capture as much information as we can prior to that first print.
Thank you. So as she alluded to, we'd like to have this information back in our office by the 12th of November. So it's about a week. Because again, what we're doing is we're then have to make sure that everything is set in AMS itself. The accommodations are checked and we double checked, and then we move into printing tickets. The tickets are linked to that student file in AMS. So if anything changes, the tickets are no good. They will not reflect any new changes. So that's why the more that we can get in place properly now, the better off we're going to be down the road. Once we print tickets, we'll send those out to you. But after that, because of the time lag and because of other concerns, you will have to print the tickets that are for changes. So again, it's in everybody's best interest to get as many of these things taken care of as soon as possible. DPI has already pulled the student information from IC. So as of Wednesday, as of Tuesday, they pulled that information. So that is being processed right now and moved into the software called AMS. That software opens up for us on November 1st. So we won't even have access to see things until next Monday. At that point, we're going to make sure that the assessment coordinators from every building have access to that. Those people who need to and are going to be involved have access to AMS. I know some of you have or have not been involved with AMS. If you've got questions, we will certainly be more than happy to help you through that sooner rather than later, because once we get going, things get pretty crazy. And speaking of getting going, the scheduling is going to be pretty interesting this year, and interesting is used in a not so good way. We have several constraints, and I just want to go through and make sure that you are aware of these. Yeah, let me just stop. Cindy, great question. What about new students who come in? We're going to include. So typically what we do is we say if any student arrives during the window and is identified as an English learner, you still have to do the assessment, except if they're arriving the last week. So we'll talk about that on this particular slide because that last week gets pretty crazy, and I just want to double check to make sure you're aware of that. But the very last week of the window, somebody arrives, you do not have to do the access test. However, you will have to do the WIDA screener in order to identify them actually as English learners.
Hey, Tim, I think the question is more, as we get students now, what is the cutoff date to when they are on the DPI list or they're not, they never did make the DPI list? We'll have to make a request to get them added.
So the cutoff, go ahead, Sarah.
Sorry. If I'm understanding your question correctly, in terms of who's in AMS,
Yeah.
is that what you're asking for? Like,
Yeah.
okay, so the students are actually in AMS right now. So starting tomorrow, I'm going to be doing a comparison between Infinite Campus and AMS to make sure everybody who's identified as of that time is in, I'll add any new students. And then it's part of my process that every time the WIDA screener email address gets a new WIDA screener report, I will, as soon as we receive it and Ben Kolash enters it into Infinite Campus, I turn around and enter that student into AMS, and then I send the the
Coordinator
coordinator a email to say that the student is in place. So it's just going to be part of our ongoing process. But if there's somebody missing, people can always email me names to double check why that might be. And I'm going to try to keep on top of it as much as I can.
So again, it's going to be as soon as a student is identified and that is confirmed, that's when we'll put them in AMS and let you know that a ticket will be ready. Does that help? Okay, great. So here's the kind of the constraints that we're dealing with as far as the scheduling this year. First of all, for alternate access, which, as you know, are those students who are receiving their instruction with the essential standards, essential elements standards, not the typical standards through the instruction. Anyways, in their IEP, it should say alt access. Those materials cannot even be ordered until the 29th of November. 29th of November is a big day. So that's the day when we can order additional material. That material is unlikely to be here on the 1st of December. Typically, the vendor is very good about getting things out and quickly, but we all know that the carriers, FedEx, UPS, the post office, have been swamped and overwhelmed at times, and that sometimes this delivery, even though it might be scheduled for about a 1 or 2 day turnaround, might end up being 3. So keep that in mind as we move forward. If you need things like written test booklets, student arrives, has had no computer experience, and cannot do the writing portion online, we can get a written a test, a physical copy for them to write in. We have to order those. And so you need to have some lead time for those orders, and then not just like a day or two. We're going to need 3+ days, but we'll see how things go. Just so you know, I want to give you that as being a constraint for this whole entire process. So testing opens on the 1st of December. We have winter break this year, beginning at the end of the day on Friday, the 17th. So it seems a little bit early. Even though it's 2 weeks, it still is the 17th is the end of the day in which we have our winter break this year. Students return on the 3rd of January. In January, I'm sorry, I believe that isn't the 6th of December is also a non-school day. So we start on the 1st, the 6th, there's no school. The 17th at the end of the day, there's no school, and that students return on the 3rd of January. MLK Day is the 17th, and the end of the semester is January 21st. That is really tight as far as the window is concerned, which closes on January 28th. Thanks, John. So keep that in mind as we start thinking about how we're going to do this. Waiting until the end is probably not a good plan, because things will get, as you know, really tight. Also, the 4 domains. Of the 4 domains, listening and reading can be done first, must be done first, and then shortly thereafter, 15 minutes to an hour. Then we're given the tiers for speaking and writing. So keep in mind that is the process. AMS, the online testing will be open on December 1 and ready to roll. So I would strongly suggest that you gear up and get ready, get students started that day. Now, question arises just at about this point every year. What about additional proctor support? Here is the reality of what we're faced here in central office. The Office of Multilingual and Global Education, OMGE, does not exist anymore. Most of the people from that particular office have been spread out into other departments, mostly C&I, and that there are approximately 3 people who remain in something called multilingual programs and support. Those are the staff we're working with in support of you on the access test. So it went from many to few. Their responsibilities are such that they cannot coordinate getting proctors for you to help support with the speaking portion. My understanding is there is a budget for this, but they cannot physically go through and hire the proctors to do this. So if you have the opportunity to get a retired staff member who might be interested in proctoring, we need to get that going. I mean, we meaning that's the general we. This process needs to start moving soon so that they can get through HR and all the requirements there. There is a budget to pay them, but I would just start the wheels going on that particular process. Otherwise, there's no way that there are the ability for this office to actually support you in that process. I don't know what the pay rate is, but we'll find out from them what the typical pay rate in the past is. Yes, Fanique.
Okay, quick question, because I missed the last part of what you said. We have to find our own proctors for this assessment.
So typically your staff does the lion's share of the assessment. That will be your in-house staff. Also, in the past, one of the things that has happened coming from in support from the district office is we've had additional staff that we bring in to the schools to help support you with that. The speaking portion takes a little bit longer than the rest of the portions. And so that is that you have to use it in smaller groups. I think 6 or 8 is the maximum that you can do, whereas the other sections you can do in larger groups. And so that's kind of been the bottleneck. So in the past, we've provided or had access to for each school for proctors. Those are the people we don't have available this year. And if you want that support, let us know that we can help with the budget portion, but we can't help with actually engaging them. So I hope that helps. I mean, I realize this is not good news and it doesn't help, but I hope that clarifies it a little bit. Great. Okay, let's continue. Professional development. Just a reminder that those people who are giving access, in most cases, have already done this. Then should be the professional development will just simply be a refresher. If you have a staff member who does not have a WIDA account, please email either Sarah or myself, and we will get that person set up so that they can actually do the professional development. If you are brand new to the WIDA access testing process, you have to log into the WIDA site, and the whole entire process, the professional development, takes approximately an hour. We will be sharing next week a document that says, here are the sections that you really need to pay attention to. Here are the ones that you can skip over. So that takes it from longer than an hour to approximately an hour. It's best practice for everyone to go through a refresher. So if you've done this once, twice, 15 times or more, go through that. You can skip through things. You could just take the quiz and get the certification. I think it's 80% that you have to pass, or is it 80%. You can just take the quiz if you've already done this.
So we have to take it every year.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. My understanding is that this year there are not changes to access, but that in 2024-25, there will be changes because they've changed some of the language acquisition standards. The WIDA standards are in the process of changing. So the assessment will also change. This year, we're all good. So just kind of a refresher, go through and take the quiz.
Can you just send us all a link to the getting into the WIDA assessment, because we're going to need to share it with anybody that's in our department that is going to be proctoring.
Yes,
Are you
yes.
talking about the training then?
Yes.
Yeah, I will put it in the agenda notes. There's a link to the training document in the agenda notes. I'll put it there too, and then it will be emailed to the it will be emailed to all access coordinators next week. And I know that usually hand in hand with that, the office of, oh, Tim, help me,
Multilingual
and global
programs and support.
they're gonna also send it out to all BRTs. That's usually the typical hand-in-hand process.
But thank you for the reminder. It's appreciated. Okay. Since AMS is not open and ready for us to share, our next meeting is really going to focus on access using AMS. So we'll be in AMS going through where to find things, how to print tickets, to show you all of this. That will be at 3 p.m. on November 10th. It's a little bit early, but because of how soon access is coming, we wanted to make sure that you had an opportunity to review this, to ask questions, and to be ready on day one. Also, I know that 3 p.m. is not necessarily the best time for everyone. That's why we're recording. Am I recording this? Yes, I am. Good. I forgot. That's why we're recording this, and we'll be posting it. So, and you know that we're always available if you have questions, if you need time to focus one-on-one, please let us know, and we're happy to help you. So I'm going to stop there for a moment, see if there are any questions about access.
Well, the questions I have is for the WIDA screener.
Okay.
There are a couple of students, for example, in Operation Fresh Start, well, all of them, they're supposed to be taking the access. They have not taken the screener. Either they refuse or they're working all day. So, and well, some of them on the list that it was sent to me, they have already graduated. And
Okay.
many of them are going to be graduating probably in December. So that's why they say, well, I don't
Okay.
have to take it.
So the first part is their identification as English learners.
Yeah.
I mean, you and I may know that, but if they have never been actually identified, if they have not taken the WIDA screener, then they will not be required to take access. And so they would not, if they refuse that, I'll have to talk with Ben Kolosh and to see if they refuse to take the screener, are they still considered English learners or not?
Okay.
Once that they are identified, the best we can do is say, you need to take this. And if they say, no, I can't, or I won't, that's called declining to test. And we'll mark it as that.
So can they still decline testing for the access?
That still exists as a reason that they don't test. It's not something that we're going to offer as being an opt-out, but if they refuse, that's instead of on other tests, they say refusal. In access, it's called decline to test.
Mm-hmm.
So we try the best we can, and if we have students who don't test, we have to keep that, make note of that. I know, Cindy, you had a question. Is there a paper copy of the regular access for students with no computer experience? That's a great question, and I don't know the answer.
I think I do.
Okay.
So I know the answer is there is paper copies available. I order them
yes.
for our private parochial sites because they don't have the same robust internet that we do here in the district. What I don't know, and I have to clarify with DPI, is whether if that's an option for any student. My guess is yes, but keep in mind it would require someone to be trained to administer paper and do the scoring like we did in the old days, but also be able to play a CD on site. There will be some equipment that is needed. And it would have to be very specific scenarios in which we would order such a thing. So if there's someone that you'd like to discuss this being an option for, please connect with me via email. I will double check with DPI to make sure we are okay to proceed, but I can order any applicable materials that would be. One thing I can definitely say for sure is that if you do the paper option, you can't mix and match. It's either all paper or all online, unless you want to do reading and listening and speaking online and do a writing booklet. That's another option. But we'd have to start with the format that you want to finish it. We can't switch in the middle. So please feel free to email any of those situations to me and we can kind of troubleshoot them case by case.
Thanks, Sarah. We've got some new kids who have been out of school
Okay,
and away from computers forever.
sounds good. Connect with me. We'll talk about what we can do.
Thank you
What
very much.
about the kids who are on virtual learning?
So thank you for bringing that up. Virtual students, so Madison Promise students must be invited to come in and take the assessment in person. So if you have, here's my suggestion, because the whole purpose is for them to be away from other students. If you have a location, a small office, if you have a room that is not being used, I would suggest using that as being the site for the assessment. Siblings can come in together and take the assessment. But again, because of the whole fact that they are being separated on purpose by their families, their choice, I would not say, oh, we've got 6 virtual families and let's bring them in all at once. We have to provide the option for those students and we have to give them a chance to come in and actually take the test.
Okay.
So, and I have no problems with that. I know it adds a whole layer of complexity. My understanding is that there are not many students who are in that situation, but there are some. And so please keep that in mind. And I would probably start thinking about those particular students when you get the roster. I know that Sarah and I have talked about Madison Virtual, the Madison Promise being listed on the roster so that you were also flagged that, oh, we're responsible for testing the student. Oh, and look, they're in the virtual schools.
Excellent. Thank you.
Can
You
I
bet.
clarify the virtual situation? So each
Yeah.
student would have to have their own room to themselves if they come in to test, you're saying?
Well, I mean, the reason that they're virtual is because there are some concerns and they're not, I would not put them into a regular classroom with students who are face-to-face.
Yes, but they can't, I think we might have like 10 altogether that are
Okay.
in the Promise. So those 10 could not be together either. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm suggesting would be the safest, because again, while they are virtual and not with our face-to-face students, they're not daily with each other either.
Right.
So yes,
That's okay. I just wanted to clarify. And then would they each need a proctor to sit in with them or?
yes, you would.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Also, one of the things regarding safety that was brought up yesterday by the middle schoolers, I am working to get, if you've got headsets and you need to disinfect them after use, I will be sending out some disinfectant wipes, just so you have that actual material on hand. So just want to make sure everybody is aware of that. Okay, let's move on to the next item, which is going to be the ACT and the accommodations that we're going to be using. So in general, ACT preparation for March has already begun. The test date is March 8th. Linked in this presentation, you'll find the DPI schedule has been posted, so all the dates that are there. Things that need attention that we'll talk about. Each one of you is either, well, not everyone here on this webinar, but each building has a test coordinator as well as a test accommodations coordinator. So the TC and the TAC, TAC. If you do not have access to success.act.org, that is going to be something that is really important. So email me, we can set that up, and actually which component, what access level you need. Once you're in there, we'll talk about what that can do, but keep in mind that that is where most of the information is about process. There's also information there about data from past ACTs. So it's a fairly, they've changed the site around a little bit, actually more than a little bit. They put information there. So, all right. Yes, sorry, we'll do that. So Sarah, could you put that? Yep, thank you. Also, there's a quick start guide available, and I think I put that in the agenda as well. If not, it is here. That will take you through what are the steps for the giving students or providing accommodations for them. So TAA is the quick start process. So success.org looks like this when you're getting ready to log in. What's available here is this is where you will invite users. This is where accommodations and information about that are available. Data from prior administrations of the ACT is available here. Material ordering is also here. So as we go through that process and get closer, we'll talk about this, but also Pearson Access Next link is in here. So it's it's getting to be a little bit better, not as overwhelming, a little bit more organized than we've had in the past, but this is a place to go for the vast majority of ACT information. Now, what about accommodations? So right now, the window to apply for accommodations is open. Started September 1. It goes through the 14th of January. So if you're involved, you need to really, again, I would suggest front loading this, and as students have their IEPs updated, make sure that that's also included. The window for reconsideration, if for instance, things don't go as expected and you want to, or new information has come to light, the window for reconsideration, new students who arrive into your school after the January 14th, or newly identified students can put in an application for accommodations. That window is January 22nd through March 4th. Again, the test date is March 8th. It's a Tuesday. So TAA is open right now. If you don't have access to that, send me an email. So there have been some changes to TAA, then the whole process. I'm going to just start with ELs. And I've also linked in here an information site that kind of summarizes things. So one of the things that we do for accommodations for English learners is there are several different pieces that can be added in: extended time, directions in a second language. And we've run into the issue that if students did not take access last year, over the summer, we learned that ACT was not accepting the fact that they were English learners from a prior year access. That has changed. So the proof of status comes in a lot of different forms. It could be an access score. It could be a WIDA screener score. It could be a copy of their schedule from IC showing that they are in a language support setting. It could be as simple as a letter on school letterhead saying that this student has been identified through the normal process as an English learner, and that they are to be given those accommodations and signed by a school official. I'm assuming that that would be the school principal. That carries the greatest weight with some organizations like ACT. But just keep in mind that there are various ways of proving that a student is an English learner. Now, changes that have happened with students with disabilities and who have an IEP. There are far fewer documents to upload. The process has been pretty onerous in the past. There has to be things like a parental release uploaded. That has changed. ACT does not want the parental release. However, it would be a good practice for us to get parental release to share this information and keep it on file locally. So still talk with parents, still talk with families about the IEP and what that means for ACT. Get this parental release form signed, keep that on file locally. The number of documents, as I said, has decreased as far as what you need to upload. Usually the IEP is and there's just a couple of documents is all that you need to have. OASIS is going to be in the process of being changed right now. So in the drop downs that typically where it says here are the in the I-7, here are the accommodations, then you have a drop down that says, oh, for the ACT, it's this, this, and this. Those have been gone in the past because really it was up to ACT. It was not up to the team surrounding and supporting that student. That has changed. So if you have a student with an IEP and they do not have any accommodations listed for the ACT, starting Monday, those will be available in the dropdown in OASIS, and you can go ahead and change things. That way, then the upload of the information to ACT is complete, including the accommodations that are supported. Now, there has been earlier this week was a webinar DPI had that was about an hour long. You can get that webinar. You can link to the resource page is here on this screen, this slide screen, and you can click it. It's at the bottom of this. I would suggest that if you want the full details of how things rolled out, you can get it there. They provide a walkthrough of what the changes are on that website.
Can I add one thing, Tim?
Please. Thanks, Peg.
So the change with OASIS, the students, we're obligated to show during the IEP what state assessments the student will take. They'll already most likely have that form in there. So now that we'll be adding a drop down with the accommodations that ACT is accepting, a case manager can go into the IEP with not having to have a full IEP meeting, update the form and call it a day. I mean, they have to notice the parent and let them know they're going to change it and then send that copy to the parent, but it isn't going to be a really heavy duty process to get that done. So that's good.
Okay.
One thing I'm going to say too, another thing I'm going to say is that some of the case managers that I work with like to look at the accommodations kind of like a menu and what they want to select. So the thing that they need to remember is ACT will be reviewing the accommodations that are in the specially designed services that we provide. They can match it to what you've chosen. So there is the likelihood that some of it may not get approved if you try to rig it somehow.
So again, if you add things to that menu that are not typically given in the classroom,
Right.
that's kind of the things that raise flags.
Right.
It will take approximately 7 to 10 days of business days in order to process all of this. So the sooner that you get this going,
Right.
you'll start getting approvals back from ACT.
Right. Okay.
Oh, okay, I see that there are several questions or comments in the chat. let's see if we can start addressing them, or if they all been addressed.
I think there's just one left, Tim, that I can see. It's, can we use phone permissions for the parental release?
I would say yes, but document that it was a phone call, date and time. So. Okay, here are some of the next steps for you to do. Starting November 1st, you will have access to Pearson Access Next. You'll be able to get in there. I am going to be inviting you that morning, so sending out to all test coordinators an invitation, and you should be able to log in. I believe if you've had access before, it should not be any issues. But again, I know that we have new folks actually being the test coordinator, so that I will make sure that you have access. From at that point, you can start inviting. I know that you probably don't want to do that on a wide scale, but you can invite members of the team who are in support of the ACT that you're working with at the building level to have access to that. From November 1st through December 3rd, you will get emails, and you will have to be able to go in through PA Next to let them know when you want materials shipped to your schools. Again, there typically are 2 dates prior to the test, and you'll have to, if you do choose the early date, you will have to store it securely at your site. And securely means under lock and key, in which that there are very few people who have access to that. So if you don't have a place like that, or you can't use it for long-term, meaning a couple of weeks storage, please choose the date that's closest to the test date. You will also need to verify your shipping address. So, so that material, when you order it, as well as when it comes, the original pencil paper material comes, we will you'll be able to get that. Just a note that there is an online version of the ACT available. I know, Marianne, you and the Capitol High staff did that last year. If you are interested in doing that again, we can certainly have that conversation and go through that process. At this point, as we're face-to-face, I don't think I want to approach this with the 4 comprehensive high schools. Let's keep working. We've got enough going on. But if Shabazz or Capital or IAE wants to do this, let's have a conversation. So I just want to put that out there, that there are different deadlines and different test dates available for those. So. Okay, questions about the ACT? There are several things that are in the notes, the meeting notes, that will allow you to get kind of a head start on some of this. Links to different sites within the success.act.org website. There are process you can go through. You click and able to get to the Wisconsin ACT webpage, in which it breaks it out by steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. We are now in steps 1, 2, and 5. So why they're not in chronological order, numerical order, I don't know, but keep that in mind. Okay.
For the ELL accommodations for ACT, in the past, we've just submitted their individual learning plan as proof. Do you think that would still? Yes. Okay, because I think I just looked at one student and he didn't take the access for the last year, but we did like a kind of screener thing this the school year, and it's on there. So
yes.
You're good. Okay.
As long as it's something that DPI has accepted, and that, I mean, again, the last resort would be something like a letter from school officials saying, yes, this student is an English learner. And so that would be, so they're now accepting a wide variety of options. So.
Okay.
other questions? Okay, going back to opt-outs, remember that this must be done in writing. Please send any documentation to our office. It's only good for a year. This does have an effect on our schools, many different levels. And finally, that students cannot opt out of the access test. Just so you're aware, we have office hours that are listed in the agenda. There's a Zoom link, one for Monday and one for Wednesday. Every week we're around waiting for you to come in, ask us questions. So please, if you have questions, let us know. We have these office hours. Obviously, any other time you can get a hold of us via email, phone call, etc., and we will certainly support and help out. And speaking of that, here is the email for Sarah and myself. So I am going to stop recording and hang out here if you have any other questions.